So, mailbag question came in here from Nick. I think I know where you're going with this question, Nick. You didn't word it perfectly, so shoot me a note. Twitter is the best way, or become a Locked On Ducks insider as well. You get priority mailbag access and a bunch of other perks as well. That link in the description below. You can get a free 14-day trial. But shoot me a note just so I can make sure I'm understanding this correctly. Nick says, question, would I be off my rocker? Yes. Before I read anything else. No, I'm just kidding. Would I be off my rocker if I said I believed Oregon in the 26 class should do anything to get tall and long with the wide receivers, even if you overpay? I believe how I interpreted the question is you meant for it to refer to what Oregon needs in the defensive backfield, because this has been a popular talking point amongst Oregon fans that there are too many short guys out there, that Tysheem Johnson and Kobe Savage and Nico Reed and Brandon Johnson were all 5'11 or 6 foot or 5'10 or whatever, and you can't have small guys out there. It just doesn't work. So I'm going to go in that direction, but if you meant Oregon's wide receivers, who are definitely not short, DeCorian Moore isn't that tall, but Benson is, I believe, 6'2", Evan Stewart 6 feet tall, and Kyler Casper 6'5", Jurion is 6'1", Justice Lowe is 6'2", 6'3", so they got plenty of height in the wide receiver room. So that's the direction that I'm going to go with this. But again, Nick, if I'm supposed to be going in a different direction, let me know, and we'll get back to that on a later episode of the show. With regards to Oregon's defensive backs, it is really easy to look at the heights of the secondary this past year and say, well, they just weren't tall enough. But now they're bringing in guys and they're getting tall. They're recruiting these tall corners, right? I hear that pretty often. It really is not that simple. It can absolutely help to have some height on the back end when you need to go up against the Jeremiah Smith. But there's so much more to being a good corner than just being tall. Dante Manning has better physical traits than Nico Reed. Who is a better corner this year? Answer, Nico Reed, by a lot. And Reed is 5'10", maybe 5'11", but probably, in the 5'10" sort of range. He was better than Dante Manning. And Dante Manning has, was a Duck for 5 seasons. 6'1", he's got that size, great athleticism. Was he ever a great corner? No. Was he a good corner? Yeah, capable. Starting caliber, not all conference guy, but didn't live up to that 5-star billing per se, but still was a capable player. But he was taller. Should he have automatically been playing over Nico Reed? Because I think if you watch the matchups that over the 2 games against Ohio State that Nico Reed had against Jeremiah Smith, if you looked at the reps there and the reps that Dante Manning had, I'm pretty sure Nico Reed played better. I mean, Reed drew the offensive pass interference, should have drawn a second one in the first game at Autzen Stadium. And in straight up man-to-man coverage, Dante Manning got beat a couple times. So it's not just about having those traits. And, the guys that Oregon's brought in, Thieneman is listed at 6 feet tall. He's not a super Kingston Lopa style, what's the Brachiosaurus looking guy? Is that Brachiosaurus? The long neck dinosaur? I don't know. Tall. He's not that tall. They bring in Theron Johnson, the DB from Northwestern. He's 5'11". Do you feel like Oregon secondary has radically changed with those two guys? Jalil Florence could be back and starting. He's 6'1", 6'2". All right, that's some solid length. I saw Triquez Bridges at 6'3" not be one of Oregon's top corners. Just because you have that height doesn't inherently make you a high-end player, and you can be shorter and be better than someone who's taller. For example, the staff came in, Brian Addison was there. I thought he was really good and rangy and did some great things, but they soured on him as the 2022 season went on. He's 6'5". Oregon targeted Clemson safety transfer last cycle, Andrew Makuba. He went to Texas instead. Go watch that guy's highlights this year. He made himself a lot of money for the NFL. He's a stud. He's only 6 feet tall. He's not 6'2", 6'3", or Kingston Lopa 6'5". I'm all about discussion. I'm all for discussing traits and what that means. But at the end of the day, you're either able to produce or not. This is not, college football is not the NFL. In the NFL, you have to have certain traits or you will not be good enough. Dylan Gabriel was a Heisman finalist on the Big Ten champs and number one team for a good chunk of the season in college football. He is not getting drafted in the first 3 rounds, or 4, or 5, or maybe at all. Why? He doesn't have the traits. The NFL is about traits. In college, it is about productivity. And oftentimes that comes from having high-end traits, but it's not as much of a requirement. So the idea of Oregon having a bigger, taller secondary, sure, I'm for that on paper. But if you have a guy that is an inch or two shorter and is clearly a better player, Verone McKinley wasn't super tall. He would have started at Oregon he would have started for Oregon at safety this past year. He wasn't a super tall guy. He was built kind of like Kobe Savage. He's like 5'10", 5'11" or so. And by the way, who's having a better NFL career, Verone McKinley or Javon Holland? Both were really good players at Oregon. It's Javon Holland. Why? Because he's got those traits. I'm still waiting for Oregon to find a Javon Holland type. That is one of the best safeties that the Ducks have ever had in my life. So, anyway, should they do anything to get tall and long with the wide receivers that they're going up against and overpay? If you can find the right guys. But they've brought in a bunch of talented recruits from the high school ranks that are in the 6'1", 6'2", 6'3" range. You know, guys like Naeem Offord or Brandon Finney or Dakota Fields. Or there are a bunch of names. Dalen Austin is taller. Roderick Pleasant is short, but they've got a bunch of guys that have plenty of height. But if you're not as good as a guy who's an inch or two shorter, I'm not gonna sit here and argue for you to be on the field just because you're an inch or two taller. So, hope that answers the question. Hope that was the question that you were shooting for there. Wanted to wrap with this because I'd mentioned him on a previous show, but Ryder Lyons is one of the top quarterbacks in the class of 2026. Oregon's heavily going after him. They had a big week of 5-star visitors over the weekend. If you didn't know, I don't know if Lyons was among them, but Oregon, Ole Miss, and USC are the teams most heavily, according to 24/7, going after Lyons. He is actually a mission kid, and what I was told is he's trying to take that mission for 1 year rather than 2 years. So Gatlin Bear, 2024 recruit, will actually be coming in next year as a 5-star receiver after a 2-year mission, and he'll essentially be a part of that 2026 recruiting class, but which still looks very good right now. But if Lyons were to commit, the earliest he'd be on campus for Oregon is 2027, and maybe not even till 2028. Though I saw Jared Mack tweet out the other day that Oregon was looking at a 2027 kid at quarterback. This is how it works. This is how it goes. But I just wanted to make sure that was out there and understood, because I think the timelines for Oregon's quarterback room going forward, it can go about one of 17 different ways. You know, Dante Moore could prove me wrong, be a Heisman finalist, one and done, off to the NFL, and then Oregon's sitting there going, do we go out of transfer, or is Austin Novosad ready to go? Or Novosad could transfer out and Dante Moore leaves, and is Achilles Smith Jr. ready to go, or Luke Moga, or any. I mean, there are just a lot. There are many things that could happen with the quarterback room there. So just wanted to make sure that was out there, and that's how we wrap up today's show. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.